Hi, friends, and welcome to 15241 Today Talk. And Jim Render and I are extremely pleased to have with us former NFL star and now Steeler broadcaster. You like that?
You use that term star loosely, very loosely.
No, it's all appropriate, especially because we're trying to enhance our ratings. So, So what do you like about being a broadcaster, being a Steeler announcer?
You know what I've loved about the broadcasting field is that, number one, that you find out when you have no other marketable skill, that's what you do. All right? You go into broadcasting, okay? Second thing about it you learn is that there's generally, if you do radio, like I do primarily, there's no dress code. So, you can roll out in your PJs or whatever you want. And the third thing is there's usually free food associated with it. So those are the things that I love about it. And normally I broadcast with my longtime running mate, Tunchilkin, Chaluch, So I'm hanging with my best friend, watching my favorite sport, and I'm getting paid for it. So what's not to like?
Yeah, and working with one of broadcasting's great people, Bill Hillgrove. Great announcer, great person.
Absolutely. Chili Billy is just, he has been the voice of the Steelers and Pitt. I remember coming into Pittsburgh, and Jack Fleming preceded him, and then Billy came along. And Pittsburgh had such a colorful flair for announcers. Guys like yourself with the Pirates and everything. It was all part of this wonderful, multi-flavored broadcasting city that you just loved.
Well, I'm going to let you guys talk a little football in a moment, but how was it that you ended up in Upper St. Clair?
I've been here so long, I don't know. I think
it's a great community.
It's a great community. People are wonderful. You moved to South Hills because when I came here in 1980, all the Steeler offensive linemen were in the South Hills. I don't know why. The quarterbacks were in the North Hills.
Raleigh lived in Mount Lebanon.
Who's that? Yeah, Raleigh lived in Mount Lebanon. It was just defensive linemen and offensive linemen seemed to, collect around the South Hills. So that's where I went. John Kolb, Mike Webster, all those guys. So I moved to the South Hills.
Raleigh Dutch was the line coach and offensive line, and George Perlis, who lived here in Upper St. Clair, was the defensive line coach.
That's right. I forgot Georgie lived here.
And, of course, the Emperor lived right up the street.
Yes, he did. Not too far from me.
Well, did they have the Friday night get-together, or the Saturday night when the team would all get together in one hotel?
South Hills Village.
Yeah.
Just across from there.
The Sheridan. It was the...
Yeah, wherever we're at. I'm lost.
It's Crown Plaza now, but...
Right. I remember that. We used to go out there on Saturday nights and then drive into the stadium Sunday mornings. So, yeah. And then, of course, they shifted to the Hilton and another place downtown, the Vista Hotel or something like that.
You and Lanny also have something else in common.
What's that?
New York roots and growing up.
Are you from New York State?
Buffalo.
I'm from Rochester.
Get out.
Yeah, I am.
No kid.
Great town.
Used to know some people out around Henrietta. I always thought that was a funny name, but Henrietta was a town there. A little bit different.
Well, there's a lot of funny names all over the country.
Isn't that the truth?
And all pronounced differently to challenge announcers. But so talk football with me. Give me, what do you want to know from Craig Wolfley about football?
First of all,
what do I know that he doesn't? That's the thing I want to. That's the first thing.
That's a relevant point. That's a very relevant point.
We can have our perspectives, but and I do pay homage to the fact of your great record, Jim. You've had a great record.
This show today is about you.
Okay.
Okay, then it's going to be a short show.
And I learned something recently that you are at Syracuse University. You were on the all-decade team.
Actually, it was the all-century team.
All-century?
Yeah.
So that means you're side by side with Jim Brown.
Can you imagine that? Boy, somebody make a mistake with that one. But yeah, think about some of the great ones,
I grew up in Ohio, and
was he not the greatest?
Oh, I ran into him one time at a department store in Cleveland. We were up there for the game the next day, and we're walking through, I don't know if it was Macy's or what it was anymore, but here he came. And I looked at this man and I thought, certainly I wasn't going to step in his way in that store, but I couldn't even imagine trying to tackle him. You know, I mean, he was
Phenomenal.
have you met him?
I have had the privilege of meeting the great Jim Brown. I met him out in L.A. In Century City, sitting at a restaurant. We were out there in the off season for an NFL players convention, and I'm sitting in a restaurant, and there's Jimmy Brown, and I'm like, in punches with him, it's Jimmy Brown. And he's like, well, you went to Syracuse, go say hi. I'm like, I don't know, he might just say, get away, kid. And I was like, okay. I went up, introduced myself, and he was very, very nice and very, very kind, and it was a great moment to meet him and shake his hand.
Did you know at that point that you both were on the All-Century team?
No, that was years before. Yeah, so to see him, to meet him, that was great.
A lot of people today probably don't realize the great history of Syracuse football. Mm-hmm. I mean, back when Jim Brown played, and I'm sure you've heard some Ernie Davis stories.
Absolutely.
Now, I'll tell you this one real quick. Ernie Davis was born in Uniontown. Mm-hmm. And this was before I was the coach there, but there was a quarterback there by the name of Sandy Stevens, who was an All-American at Minnesota. And my point being, if Ernie hadn't left Uniontown and gone to New York, he and Sandy Stevens would have been in the same backfield.
Wow.
Now, that's an All-America quarterback and a Heisman Trophy winner running back. That would have been, how about that? That would have
been something.
And I happened to be at Cleveland Stadium when they introduced Ernie right after he was acknowledged that he had cancer. And they introduced him. He came out of the dugout at Municipal Stadium, the old Municipal Stadium, and walked down to the 50-yard line. I'm telling you, there was 80,000 people there that night, and there wasn't a dry eye in the place because everybody knew he wasn't going to make it.
Think about the fact that you would have had Jim Brown and Ernie Davis in the same backfield together, which was what they were drafted for. Yeah, I just can't even comprehend how much offensive firepower in a backfield you'd have.
So we're getting away from you, but
that's okay.
Congratulations on your career at Syracuse.
Well, thank you very much. I'm most humbled and greatly appreciated my time there. It was a great time. There was just a lot of fun there. The whole organization really has turned around because when I got there, they were still living off the remnants of the Schwartzwalder years and the great 59 undefeated team, national championship team. And they had not made a new commitment or real commitment to upping the program. So we kind of got the tail end of it, shall we say. And the new stadium was built my senior year. So we played 12 road games my senior year rather than having any home games. We were all on the road. We played at the Meadowlands, the Meadowlands for 3 games, then Rich Stadium in Buffalo for 3 games, and then one at a local college in Central, what was it, Colgate or something like that? I can't even remember where, for 1 game in Central New York. But that's what we did for 7 home, quote-unquote, home games my senior year.
I had an experience up there. I was a graduate assistant in West Virginia, and I scouted a game at the old stadium. Mm-hmm. And I made a mistake.
The rock pile.
I made a mistake of wearing this West Virginia blazer, and it had snowed, and I was afraid to come down. They were throwing snowballs at the referees, and I was afraid to come down in my blazer because I'm going to get killed up here in Syracuse. So
I will tell you one story that you're going to love because you had a little bit of fire as a coach. All right, Frank Maloney. He was an Irish coach, one of those, Newt Rockney guys, So my freshman year, we're playing the University of Washington, and we're in the same locker room that Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, all these greats, heralded greats of years before were there. I mean, this thing it was the most dank, awful locker room you can imagine, right? So we're in there. Now, one of the problems is you have guard dogs on campus and everything, and the stadium was right on campus. They kept the guard dogs in a room above us, right? So Frank is doing his Irish thing, getting all whipped up, and you got to do this, man. You got to. And all of a sudden, the dogs start hearing him, and they start howling. Now I'm a freshman, and I'm sitting there because back in the day, you kept a straight face, and you're just getting locked in, and you got to be tough, and you got to be hard, and all of a sudden you're. And I'm looking around, and all the guys got their heads down, and they're starting to laugh. And I'm like going, I ain't laughing because I know Frank will come over and punch me, right? So I got my head down, and the dogs are just going crazy, and they're like, sounds like they're fighting with each other and everything. And Frank is rolling on, man. He doesn't even acknowledge the dogs. It was one of the most bizarro pregame speeches I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, I wish there were videotape of video and audio of that.
That had to be something, man.
What was your first thought when you knew you were drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Oh, man. Well, I'll back up a little bit. Prior to being drafted, I got word in, the spring of 1980. It said, Coach Knoll is coming to work you out. I was like, whoa. He just won, Chuck Knoll, the Emperor? He just won his 4th Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? He's coming here to Syracuse to work me out? Yes. I was like, whoa, and I was just fired up. Well, a few days later, in comes Coach Knoll, and, we're in Manley Fieldhouse, and he's telling me this and that. And, of course, this was just about when they had just 2 previous years or 3 years previous outlawed the head slap, and offensive linemen could now punch with their hands, extend their hands. So he was really at the forefront of teaching guys how to punch and use their hands. So as we do some drills, I pull left, I pull right, all this sort of stuff, but he wants pass protection. Well, pass protection back then was pretty much you just absorbed the bull rush or whatever, and you just started the rudiments of learning to use your hands. We weren't into high professional holding as of yet. But anyhow, so Coach Knoll, he's not one of these guys just to teach it. He's going to get down and do it with you. And so here I am. I'm with Chuck Knoll, just won, as I said, his 4th of the 70 Super Bowls. And he lines up and he says, now you got to punch me. And we run a couple and he goes, no, that's not a punch. He goes, no, come on, punch. And he's lining up. He gets a 3-point over me. And he comes along and he bull rushes, throws an uppercut, and I punch. And he looks at me with a look that I would come to know, that bulldog look, like, okay, you're not getting it, son. And this is really ticking me off. And he says to me, my wife can punch harder than that. Now I'm sitting there thinking, you don't think I can do this? And he goes, now listen, I'm going to throw the uppercut, punch, good punch in the chest. And I'm like all wired up, and I'm thinking, what do? Do you punch a legend or not? So, gadzooks, I fired off, boom, I punch him. Well, my hand hit his chest, shoulder, went up to his mush. I hit him right in the grill. And his head went back like a Pez dispenser. And I know that I'm pretty much giving our age away. With,
like
you can laugh at Pez.
Like a Pez
it went
dispenser.
back, man. And he's bleeding from the mouth. And he stops and he looks at me. And I'm frozen with terror. I'm thinking, oh, no. And he touches his lip and he looks at me, and all of a sudden he goes, now that's a punch. And I walked out of there and I called my parents. I go, well, you can take Pittsburgh off the board because they ain't going to draft me. I said, I just bloodied Coach Knoll's lip. And wouldn't you know it, a month and a half later, they drafted me in the 5th round. So I thought that was pretty funny myself,
I never knew Coach Knoll, but did you ever have a chance to share that story with him later on?
I never brought it up. I tried to stay away from that. So proceeding on to draft day, I'd spent all day. Back then it was a 2-day draft. They had, 12 rounds or something like that. And so towards the end of the first day, I left the house. I thought, my grandmother called like 47 times, and you got buddies and everything like that. No, Grandma, I haven't been drafted yet and all that. So I left the house, and I guess what happened was I just left, and a phone call came in, and my goofy 12-year-old sister, she answers the phone. She's talking probably for a couple minutes, and my mom goes, who is that? And Mom talks another minute, and she goes, honey, who is that? And she comes and goes, I don't know, some guy from Pittsburgh named Chuck. Coach Knoll's talking to my goofy 12-year-old sister, and he never told me over the next decade and in a couple years, of working with him, that what he talked about my sister with. My sister could never remember. So anyhow, that's my draft day story.
You were happy though.
Oh, ecstatic. I mean, Pittsburgh was really the perfect place for me to land. I remember when Bobby Beathard, who was GM of the Redskins, after a workout, he goes, if you were 2 inches taller, you'd be, in the first 8 for sure draft. Because I was told I'd be maybe a 9th round pick, maybe a free agent, nothing spectacular. And here Pittsburgh drafted me in the 5th round on the first day. But, Bobby Beathard said another 1.5 inches, 2 inches, and you'd have been, first 3-4 rounds, something like that. And I'm like, what's another 1.5 inches? You want me to wear high heel cleats? I mean, come on, give me a chance here, But I was thrilled because all the offensive linemen they were just what I was. They were shorter, quicker, strong, athletic, guys that could run. John Kolb was a marvelous.
You were
athlete.
taller than Webster, weren't you?
Well, everybody was taller than Webster. But we had that trapping offense, and you know how that trapping offense is, Jim. You got to have a group of guys together for a number of years before that trapping offense really manifests itself in understanding all the intricacies and nuances that's going to occur. Because you got people running through, and you can't say you trap this guy. You got to trap the area, so you've got to be able to adjust. If you're a tall, lanky guy that you can't be a knee bender and can't bend, get down low, you're going to get stuffed in the hole. So you got 6'6", 300-pound guys that couldn't do it because they couldn't get down and get under the linebackers as they filled, or the defensive tackles as they, because they knew the trap was coming. So it was a perfect fit for me.
Chuck knew that.
Yeah.
When,
Thankfully he was not put off by the fact that I bloodied his lip.
well, he told you to hit him.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You
And
said
pushed
hit
his
me,
head
I
back
did.
like a Pez dispenser.
Oh man.
Was playing football fun, or was it a job?
I'd say that was 2-part. At the beginning, frankly, if you'd have given me room and board, I'd have played for free. I loved the game. I just loved the game since I was young, since I was 7. My mom tells a story that I pulled her aside one time, and I stood there and I said, Mom, someday I'm going to be a pro football player. I had no idea why it was so important to me, but at that point in time, even then, and I'd never, and believe it or not, I can sit here truthfully and say I never doubted it. There's not any real reason I can point to saying, that's why I thought I was going to be a pro football player. It wasn't like I set the world on fire in high school. It wasn't like I had great, unbelievable measurables. I wasn't even brought to the combine, the rudimentary combine that they had back in the day. Of course, I played that another way to my kids. When they asked me if I went to the combine, I said no. I said they knew I was so good they didn't even bother. It's all how you spin it to your kids. But it was a great landing place for me because that's what they used was short, strong, quick offensive linemen, and I can't imagine going anywhere else. I loved it. That was the greatest time when I came in there in 1980, and I'll never forget. We had a week of practice before the vets came in. 2 a days, and actually on Thursday or Wednesday, the Wednesday practice. Before the Thursday when the vets came in, Tunch-Ilkin went down and we had to call practice. We're down to 5 offensive linemen, and after Tunch hurt his knee, Chuck had to call. We only had 4, and we had to run every play twice a day. I mean, it was, you want to talk about Spartan living. We checked into St. Vincent College, and it was in the Bonaventure dorm, and there was no air conditioning, there was no cell phones, no TV. Horsehair stuffed mattresses, okay? I mean, it was really Spartan living there. It was cornfields, a big university, and Chuck Noll and football. That was it.
Sounds like fun.
As only a coach would say, because you have everybody's undivided attention. And that's one thing, that I think is a lot of teams are missing because as football progresses into more modernism. One of the standard routes, one of the things I thought was so great was when you have a training camp and you get everybody away from family and friends and other outside diversions, it was very productive because everybody there realizes we're all giving up something to be here. This is a special time. It's a grueling time. It's a melting together time. It's a brotherhood. And I appreciated that. I hated training camp like everybody else, but it was a time that people were brought together and everybody realized you got a hand in the pile for one big purpose. And that's what Latrobe always served as. And what I thought was great about it was everybody was there for a specific purpose. And whether Mike Tomlin, Bill Cowher, Chuck Knoll, these guys all were able to marshal the feat of every Super Bowl appearance, every Super Bowl win or loss, whatever, had its roots in Latrobe. And I think it says something about it.
At training camp, is there any time for tomfoolery?
Okay, here's the difference between our era and these guys, right? Remember when in the Bill Cowher era and all that, these guys would come in driving tractors and all sorts of cars and everything like that. When you don't make the millions of dollars, when your training camp is so bad and you're so miserable, you don't even want to crack a smile. That's the difference, okay? With Coach Knoll, it was about, this is football. You got it twice a day. Out of your first 16 days, you got 14 days of two-a-days, all right? And it's about 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. You got conditioning after the second one of the day. Full pads, and full go. You know what preseason football meant to me? It meant I got to go to a hotel the night before a game. I got a nice mattress. I got air conditioning. I got room service. That's why I wanted preseason. Give me preseason. I'll play a preseason game any day because I'm staying in a nice hotel. Staying up there and sweating each night, laying on a horsehair stuffed mattress. Let me tell you, that's not fun.
But so nobody was playing pranks on each other?
Oh, yeah. I mean, guys, removing all stuff from a room and find it in the bathroom, all crammed in there, or cherry bombs being exploded outside somebody's window. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on, But you had those things, but we didn't have the free time like a lot of these guys have. They have one practice a day. They get off every fifth day or something like that. You've got golf carts that drive you all around. You walked everywhere on that campus. After two practices and 2 hours, 90-degree heat and humidity, and you're walking all over the place, and you're just plain leg weary. I mean, they talk about having a Veterans Day off. I told them, Veterans Day off? Yeah. When you got cut, that was my Veterans Day off. Yeah. They cut you. So that's the way it was, and it's all right. Young guys come up today and they say, how did you guys practice twice a day? I'm like, you had no choice. If you want to make a paycheck, that's what everybody did,
Was Bradshaw still?
Yes, I played 3 or 4 years with Terry. Yeah. So I played in Terry's last game, December 15th, 1983, at Shea Stadium. And
how do you remember the date?
It was just imprinted in my head, man. I mean, Terry Bradshaw was that's a Hall of Famer. That's the blonde bomber, brother. I mean, I'm sure you remember dates. Now, I give you, I've been in a lot of quick stops with a chin strap on, but the fact is, when the blonde bomber plays his last game, it's significant, and I'll never forget because all week long, they were stressing to us, you can't let Terry get hurt. Remember, he had his elbow, right? The minor bird with Myron and everything like that, and he wasn't able to play all year long, and so we go into Shea Stadium against the Jets, and actually it was the Jets' last game in Shea. So we go in there, and Terry's got the elbow thing going on, and he comes out, and we go down the field. He's throwing the ball like crazy. We're supposed to be running the ball. And he throws 2 TD passes. Calvin Sweeney, I think Greg Garrity was the other guy. And we're up 14-0. So Tunch, Terry, and I are sitting on the bench and sucking down a Gatorade. And Tunch says, hey, Terry, weren't we supposed to be running the ball? He goes, shoot, you know me. He's got that drawl. Shoot, you know me, Tunch. I ain't no mailman. I'm a gunslinger. Let's go, baby. And then he blew out his elbow, But I'll never forget the end of that game either because I was out on the field with Marty Lyons, great Alabama defensive tackle and Jet. And the fans were pouring out of the stadium, and they started ripping the place apart, taking mementos. trying to, for the game. And some guy's there, and some guy comes along and tries to rip Marty's chin strap off, and Marty goes, I think it's time to get out of here. You know how crazy these New York fans are. And we exited stage left.
How'd you and Touch become such great friends?
We were drafted together in 1980, which I always like to remind Tunch. I was in the 5th round. He was just a 6th rounder. So, not that we're too competitive or nothing. We just started hanging together, and, 2 rookies. He was cut his rookie year, but he came back. And, the next year we started rooming together in training camp, and we just got tighter and tighter. I think the place it really happened was in Houston. Terry had been hurt. Cliff Stout had messed up his arm. Mark Malone was a quarterback. We were playing down at Houston Astrodome. And Mark scored, and Vernon Perry came up, and this might have been the 3rd year. I can't remember. But anyhow, Vernon Perry threw a forearm into Mark's head. Now, Mark was the only quarterback we had left, the only healthy quarterback. It was a cheap shot like you couldn't believe. But back then, it was like, let's not get into who hit who and that sort of thing. And so Tunch came running up, and he had an uppercut from his socks. And, he just drilled Vernon Perry, and the brawl was on. And so a guy jumped on his back, I jumped in, that sort of thing. So anyhow, fast forward towards the end of the game, and it was a vicious game. As only back in the 80s and 70s, that game, that time frame, it was a lot different than it is today. But anyhow, so we're in the Astrodome, and Tunch is absolutely out of his mind because Vernon Perry had made some sort of comment about he was going to get Tunch after the game, and Tunch was like, I'm going to get him. He goes, you got my back? I go, yeah, I got your back. The gun, two-minute gun goes off, and we're like salivating. And then the final, I'm not the 2-minute gun, the whistle goes off, and then the gun goes off, and Tunch just charges across the field. I got his back, and it was about halfway over. I realized it's 2 of us and the whole Houston sidelines. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not going to end well. He was up there, and Vernon Perry had already exited. There was some comrades that intercepted and cooled things off, and I was like, I had his back ever since then, But it was like that, He just.
Now you have a radio show together.
Yes, we have been brothers for 40 years. God brought us together, and my mom thinks she's got 4 boys. His mom thinks she's got 2, And he has been a huge member of the Wolfley family for years, and. We've just been buddies. We've just always hung together.
And you've both done a lot of good work in the community, too. You've made a commitment to giving back.
Well, we've been given so much. I look at my career, and I'm like, Lord, I don't even know how you let me. The desire of my heart for 12 years playing professional football, playing for the finest organization in professional sports. And it's a humbling thing. It's a wonderful thing. And then, as I said, we were talking off the air. Chalucci goes down. He gets involved at Light of Life Rescue Mission on the North Side, which has been doing God's work for over 60 years. And he drew me into it, and, I got involved. And so we do a fundraising walk, which is we're never fully sure if we're 1 year ahead, behind. It's somewhere around 18, 19 years around. I don't know. I flunked math twice, so what am I going to do? The point is, the point is that, there are great people there, and I don't have the skills to minister to people who are in that desperate world of addiction and having problems, but the transformational power of Jesus is exhibited every day by men and women who have been there. So what I can do is help to raise some money, to help take care of, to allow them to be able to do what they need to do. So it's just, it's what God said. He said, you're always going to have the poor with you. You take care of them. So this is the part how I can do.
Greg, keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for allowing me.
Thank you.
I was serious about photoshopping me, okay?
Okay, we'll do our best. And may God bless you.
Thank you, brother.
15241 Today Talk with Craig Wolfley today. Thank you very much for joining us.